Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll give it a few minutes for people to dial in. I'm really excited about this session. It's the most international green shoot session we've done. We've got Hong Kong, Singapore and London represented on this call. We're going to use this green shoots to deep dive into some amazing initiatives that these three international superheroes are working on to understand how these are going to help the broader fintech community, how you can apply to these schemes and hopefully to inspire more support from the private sector to help our fintechs. So this is your chance to learn about Razer's $50 million fund that was announced last week, AMTD's $50 million fund that was announced just 24 hours ago in collaboration with the ASEAN Financial Innovation Network, and hear more about the initiatives that Lucy is working on both at Standard Chartered and with the UK government. So please do ask your questions through the Q&A portal and we promise to answer them as we go through the session. So far we have about 150 people on the call, so I think we're okay to get going. I'm your co-host Rebecca and I'll hand straight over to Pat.
Brilliant. Thank you, Becca. And happy Friday and welcome to the third edition of our Green Shoot series. It's officially the hat trick for us, so we're thrilled about that. We started Green Shoots to essentially provide practical advice and insight during these dark times and also provide some light relief. And I suppose importantly, we wanted to shine a spotlight on some of the initiatives that are moving the dial in our community. So last week, we were very fortunate to have the odd couple on our show. That was the youthful exuberance of Pradjit from Neum and the wise silver surfer, Matthias Kroner, the former founder of Fidor Bank. And they both gave an authentic account of their experiences and insight into how things will shape up over the short to medium term. But right now, we are super grateful to be joined by Calvin, the founder and chairman of the board of AMTD Group, Meng, the CEO of Razer, and Lucy Demery from managing director at Standard Chartered. So as a child, Lucy wanted to be a ballerina and an astronaut, which is an interesting combination. I presume that you could dance your way to the stars. So Lucy is the toughest person on this panel by some distance, as she's a black belt in Taekwondo. So I'm just going to warn you guys, Calvin and Meng, that just be careful what you say over the next kind of 50 minutes or so. In her spare time, she's the managing director and global head of fintech banking at Standard Chartered, where she leads the coverage of fintech clients and investors in the sector. She's also a member of the UK government's Fintech Investment Group, and so we'll be delving into some of the initiatives that are happening in the UK. So thank you for joining us, Lucy. Next up, we have Meng. Fantastic. Next up, we have Meng, who is a pure gamer at heart. I think he's found his home at Razer. As a child, he used to play computer games throughout the night and would feign being asleep when his parents tried to catch him out. I think you've managed to do quite well on that front. In his spare time, he is the CEO of Razer Fintech and the Chief Strategy Officer at Razer Inc. And he has known Min Liang, the founder of Razer, for over 30 years and was apparently instrumental in helping with Razer's IPO. So welcome as well, Meng.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Calvin, who as a child wanted to be Superman and apparently Spider-Man as well, so he could fly around the world. I can kind of somewhat relate, as my dreams were always to be a Jedi. So technically, there's still time for us. We just need to find some kryptonite, and I need to find a lightsaber at some point. In his spare time, Calvin is chairman of the board at AMTD Group and has been making the news a fair bit recently, from a listing of his investment banking business on the SGX last week to last night's amazing announcement of a 50 million fund in partnership with AFIN, whose founding members include the World Bank's IFC, MAS, the ASEAN Bankers Association, MasterCard and AMTD Group. So we'll be discussing this announcement very shortly. So a big welcome to our panelists and thank you for joining us. So just to recap, the focus of this session is to delve into some of the global initiatives to support the fintech community. But I kind of like to start with how COVID-19 is affecting your way of working. So maybe Lucy, what does a typical day look like for you, and in particular, for you personally, but also how do you manage your teams as well?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone. Good to be here with you, and thanks for joining us. So I'm based in the UK. Life is certainly different here these days. But one thing which hasn't changed for me is I'm woken up every morning by my dog Theo. So I start the day by taking him for a quick walk around while I have my morning coffee, and then jump onto a series of early morning video calls like this with colleagues and clients in Asia. I try to break for lunch where I can with family, which is lovely, and then catch up with our partners in the UK and Europe. I try to catch the daily UK government briefing, which is on at about 5 o'clock each day, to stay current on the latest policies. I then catch up on emails and generally speak to everyone in our teams in New York and San Francisco. You know, it's hard. You asked about staying current with your teams. I think it's just about trying to bring a greater level of obviously remote connectedness through platforms like this, but also just a new level of empathy in our work and understanding that everyone's going through sort of different challenges these days with family at home and otherwise. So just a new level of empathy to the day-to-day tends to help.
Okay, fantastic. And one quick question before we move on. So have you managed to crack the holy grail of brainstorming on Zoom?
Brainstorming, no. Yeah, we tend to use Blue Jeans at Standard Chartered. No, we haven't managed to crack that yet. I think we're spending a lot of time investing in remote collaboration tools, but it's a work in progress.
Fantastic. Okay, Calvin. So talk us through a typical day, and how do you manage? Because I realise that Hong Kong's a little bit more open at the moment, so you're going between different offices within Hong Kong.
Absolutely. I think Hong Kong is a bit different. Without complete shutdown, you know, or home office mandatorily. So I think most of us are still working in the office. Despite that, I think different companies, they might have taking turns, you know, to split the team to go to work different time of the week. I think, you know, my typical day, and for those knowing me well, I wake up pretty early every morning. So 5 a.m. and to start work usually 6 a.m. So I use most of the time, you know, before 9 a.m. to deal with most of the internal work, talking to the internal team. But then, you know, for the rest of the day, you know, and a bit more fun, talking to all the business partners, friends, clients, and trying to identify more opportunities. I think over the past few years of building our AMTD, I focus more into building out our ecosystem and focusing into how to interact with different others' ecosystem. So it's lots of interactions. So I think now you know, the changes in the overall work environment, I think making it you know, less physical meet up with clients. But then I'm sure that like most of you, you know, all the Zoom calls, you know, everywhere around the world. Great.
And have you managed to crack brainstorming yet? Virtual brainstorming?
Yeah, I think spending more time, you know, doing that. I think indeed, right. You know, I think now that with this virtual dealing with clients, businesses, you know, we got more time to kind of brainstorm about or the overall visionary for next step. So I think working even more harder than before.
And I hope you get to take some time off at the weekends.
Yeah, but I integrate my personal life into my ecosystem as well. So day to day, you know, my work, my living, you know, all the same, all integrated, fully integrated.
It sounds like my life at the moment, certainly. And Lee Meng, what are the challenges you're having working from home and trying to keep your team motivated?
Well, I think the biggest challenge I have is, you know, I'm typically on the road a lot. So I think the biggest complaints from my family was they never saw me over the last couple of years working at Razer, flying around and all that. But so the biggest challenge actually for them is that I'm around 24/7 right now. But when you think about it, you know, the teams, we are all on the digital platform anyways. We use Teams to communicate. We form groups, and I actually do check in with everyone every morning for some time. We exchange ideas along the way during the day. But again, I think to Calvin's point, you know, you kind of have to kind of get used to kind of, instead of physical meetings, doing it through calls, through video conferencing and all that. But yeah, I think it turns out to be, I think, more longer working hours. I mean, I'm literally on calls for easily anywhere from 10 to 12 hours the entire day. Before you start the day, you kind of check through your emails, and then at the end of the night, you look at your emails and you see this whole stack waiting to be answered. So yeah, I think that's the challenge, is prioritizing. and obviously staying focused. If not, it just gets a bit too overwhelming at times.
And we're here today, I guess, to talk about the initiatives that you're working on that are really about supporting the greater good for the fintech community and for the startup community more broadly. So how are you managing that workload with your day jobs that you should already be doing in a kind of pre-COVID-19 world? Or is this completely taken over from business as usual? It sounds like that might be the case for you, Meng.
Well, I think it's all of the above. I think it's, again, back to the point, it's all about balancing. I think there are things that needs to go on. I think there are initiatives that, whether it's at the fintech level or the group level, that I think everyone just piles in and helps out. I think it's important for speed, for certain of these things that we're talking about. You know, the survivability of some of the business partners requires you to really react very quickly. You know, so yeah, I think we're just kind of rolling with the punches as we go along.
And Lucy, what does that mean for you with your role in the UK government's FinTech investment group? I imagine that's taking up a lot more of your time now. How are you balancing that with the jobs from Standard Chartered side, or is it all focused on COVID-19? There's not really business as usual for you?
It just means more work, I think. It's a tough one. There's no easy answer. Trying to get all of this sort of crisis response work done as well as our day jobs, and trying to make sure that our day jobs are being, you know, the day job is thoughtful about sort of the strategic implications for our business long term coming out of COVID. You know, we are speaking to government quite a lot. We've been very actively offering our advice and resources to try to help enhance financial support for SMEs and startups that were not previously covered by the existing schemes the government has announced here in the UK. One resource which we've volunteered pro bono is a new Fintech Portal that we've built over the past few weeks. So that's certainly taken up a lot of my time and our team's time, with the goal of hopefully helping the government potentially streamline funding applications from startups and SMEs. So, you know, our portal would automate eligibility checks and analytics with the hope that we can ensure capital is deployed more rapidly to those who need it. We've also been offering views on things like capital structures to incentivize private sector co-investment. But no, I think that just adds to the hours in the day, and you do need to be a bit more disciplined around prioritization and focus.
Yeah, I definitely feel you there, Lucy. It feels like that for a number of us in the MAS team as well. And I think we'll definitely delve into some of those initiatives later on in the session. But for now, I think I just want to say congrats to Calvin on the announcement yesterday alongside AFIN. And before we show the infographic so we can run through that, I just want to kind of ask you what your why this has come about, and a little bit around your personal motivations for this initiative.
Absolutely. I think the COVID-19, this global pandemic, I think have been changing the day-to-day living of all of us, everyone. But I think more importantly, creating more uncertainties to the global economy. I think definitely changing also the appetite of investors. And also, I think in terms of the amount of the fundraising, in terms of for fintech, and also for the overall market, I think capital market as well. So I think we feel that it will be important that we provide immediate support to the fintech community, not just that because they are seeing this as one problem right now, but then how to actually anchor the community to provide more long-term and sustainable support. And also, if you look into the current situation right now, because of the virus, of the global current situation, it's actually changing the living style or the overall behavioral of people, actually maybe ultimately towards a positive way, making it more digital, making it towards more cashless society, making it people connected, just like Lee Meng, we talk about it, maybe even in a more closer or efficient manner digitally. So I think, you know, these are all goods actually for the fintech community, embracing greater market share, you know, bigger opportunity to grow, but ultimately they need the support right now immediately to go through this particular situation or through the prolonged winter. So the overall thinking, I think, you know, from my end, building our AMTD, I think all these years, I've been focusing also on into building our charity organization, AMTD Foundation, focusing into two areas. One is into the sustainability of the new economy, and also into talent cultivation, upskilling. So I think these areas, I think currently coincide exactly into what we want to do for this AMTD fund that we plan to roll out. I mean, with the support and with the partnership with ASEAN, and we are very glad that we have the opportunity to be the first corporate founding member of ASEAN. Seeing it as the center place to promote connectivity between fintechs locally and also financial institutions across ASEAN, and also promote financial inclusion. So I think all this alongside the motto and also the overall thinking of AMTD Foundation, myself, and also AMTD Group. So I think this AMTD ASEAN Solidarity Fund, that we see it as a way that we want to support in two ways. One, I think, is that we want to support it through immediate grants that we provide the funding, making it available to all the needed fintech players immediately over the next short period of time, so that they have the money token to survive the winter. But more importantly, we see beyond the current immediate time that we want to provide a more longer-term sustainable support. Those will be in the form of investment, maybe in the form of equity-like, convertible, venture debt, or similar kind. So I think the two in combined, we see it as very important or necessary, that not only provide a short-term or one-time support, but a more long-term support to anchor the overall community and the long-term development of the local community. And I think the two stream or the scheme that we are building, one is actually the grant scheme. We are very happy to have the support, the overall guidance by the Singapore Fintech Festival, SFA, to be the administrator for this grant. And this grant scheme will make it available for each fintech company up to 20K, and it will be to support their conducting POCs with the ASEAN financial institution. And it will be important that the POC will be conducted on APEX. I think that's as one scheme. The other one, I think, more longer term, that we see for the investment side, that we would love to work with many different partners, and partners that, friends that, if you are currently listening over this call, then, join us. And we would want more enabling empowerment to the local fintech community across ASEAN market. And it will be for longer term, different forms of investment type that we see it beyond the current situation, the COVID-19, but then, for much longer term, the ongoing development of the overall community. So we hope that over this period of time and through it, we all become stronger.
Thanks, Calvin. I want to focus in on the second part you mentioned there, so around the investment scheme, and particularly on the venture debt piece. So venture debt is something that's quite nascent in Southeast Asia. We don't have many venture debt firms here yet. And Lucy, I know you've been looking into venture debt a lot for startups in Europe. How important do you think venture debt is to a healthy funding ecosystem? And how does that kind of fit in with the equity side or the convertible note side?
Yeah, I think it can be a very powerful tool, particularly when we think about it holistically with other elements of the cap structure. But venture debt is a nice way to target, I suppose, startups who have already demonstrated a track record in their business model and in their ability to raise capital. And what it is a bridge essentially between funding rounds. And at a time like this, when the runway in existing cash is rapidly reduced by the restriction in third-party capital that's available to a lot of fintechs right now, and difficulties around meeting existing revenue milestones because the real economy is suffering, that can be quite a powerful tool to hold fintechs over to their next round when they start, when the economy bounces back again, and investors are less pressured to focus on the existing assets or fewer assets in their existing portfolios. So we think it's quite a powerful tool.
Thanks, Lucy. Do you want to add something there, Calvin? I can see you opening to speak there on the venture debt side.
I'm just saying that I think it will be important that we create more of a place, I think, in Singapore and also across Southeast Asia, that wide open types of different products, investment types, no matter venture debt, no matter different other types that I just mentioned about, that to make the overall community more mature in terms of how they connect with the funding pocket, and ultimately to connect from the private financing into the capital market. I mean, the capital market can still be very powerful. And if you can see that, I think we, as one of our verticals, being an investment bank, one of the most active one or growing very fast in the Asia space, we also bring ourselves, I think, to list in Singapore, I think, weeks ago. And in a way that, we embrace all the creative connectivity from private financing into public financing, I think it's very important to create this wide open optionality for the fintech space.
That's great. And I know it's only been not even 24 hours, 23 hours since this fund was announced. But what's been the response like so far? Who have you heard from, and kind of what are the questions or the comments that have been raised?
Well, I think we receive a significant amount of reaching out to us. I think not only just from the fintech players, but also from the investment side or the investor side, VCs or existing investors, shareholders in fintech companies, that they're really trying to join force to support these fintech companies, right? Seeing the next opportunity for each of these players, but ultimately trying to give them the necessary support at this very important point in time. So I think which is something very important, that we want to interact and connect, not just with the needed ones, the players, but also with the buy-side community. I think so far, I think they are all very much interested, I think, in both sides of the schemes. Not just for immediate, short-term funding support, but obviously more interested into a longer-term collaboration, not only in terms of the funding, but then, you also noted that in terms of how we introduce about this fund scheme, that, we will open up, our ecosystem to collaborate and to connect with each of these fintech players, and not just locally in Singapore, but across Southeast Asia and also across our investment portfolio, or into our different verticals, into Hong Kong, Greater Bay, rest of China, or beyond Asia. So I think, there are lots of opportunities to not just get the funding, but to creating values and to build something great together.
That's great. And just one question around how you see this developing in the medium to longer term. Have you given any thoughts to that? How big can this be?
I think I presume that you asked about a fund, right? So I think from our perspective, we do not want this fund to be just for this particular nation in time. So despite that, I mean, we talk about the grant scheme, and also, I mean, for the overall investment scheme for a certain period of time. But on the overall basis, I think this AMTD fund, we want to make it available, and as a very important long-term anchor, part of the family, I think, of ASEAN Fintech, that we make it available. I mean, just like that, when Rebecca mentioned about, the different types of investment pocket, when we talk about VC, there are only 3 to 4 active ones in space. We want to be one of the, added forces and, added players, and not just us, but actually bringing a lot more players into the overall community. So the more busier, the more crowded, the community, the better that we bring in not only connectivity, funding, but also future areas of collaboration.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I think we'd like to move on now to Razer and Razer Fintech and Lee Meng. And congrats on your announcement last week. And can you just share a little bit more? Talk us through this. What was your drivers and how it works? That would be interesting for the audience to hear about.
Sure. I guess number one, I guess for us, our business is a pretty global business. We have about 16 offices worldwide. So it's funny when we talk about Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever, we started feeling a little bit of the changing tide because of our Chinese colleagues and where this whole thing started. So we started feeling that, hey, if this thing escalates and goes global, how would that impact our business, impact our business partners? So we've been watching it for some time, because this started way ahead of Southeast Asia or the US. But obviously things did kind of escalate, kind of came fast and furious. And then we've obviously had quite a bit of partners coming over and obviously asking for help, asking for kind of some cash flow relief programs and all that. And we thought to ourselves, rather than just kind of trying to deal with this piecemeal, it was probably better to put everything together, frame it up, and actually be able to quickly look at whether the kind of ask for call for help fits the criteria, and then we quickly decide to move or not. Because I think, again, back to my initial point, is all about focus and speed and what can we do. If we really can't do it, I also don't want to drag the feet along and hope they kind of go spend time with other kind of avenues for fundraising or whatever. Right? So we then looked at the business and said, look, the hardware side of the business is something that is stable. The supply chain original issues were resolved, so that business was doing okay. We looked at our services business, which includes one from the gaming side of it, Razer Gold, which is probably the world's largest kind of game credit out there that's now being used for entertainment. What can we do there? And I know that, Pat, this is one of your favorite things we can talk about later. And then the other side, which is the fintech business, but our fintech business at this point in time is really starting from Southeast Asia, and what can we do to actually keep the business partners together, so that we have a very vibrant community once this thing lifts, right? So I was spending a lot of time in Malaysia from 2nd of January all the way to kind of the first week of March. Things were going and we were talking and all that, and then suddenly with the pending lockdown, I came back and things have slowed down. Some of our partners have been impacted. Businesses revenues were seen 60, 70, 80. I've even heard 90% kind of went out the door in a very short span of time. But clearly having very interesting angles for us to work together, and those conversations have been coming through, especially since we made the announcement. So I think that's something that is achieving what we thought we wanted to do. Again, number one, streamline the process. Number two, really to be able to process through very quickly and see who are the guys we can help from the fund.
That's great. And I think we've got an infographic to share from your side too, or from Razer's side. Can we bring that infographic up? And Meng, can you talk us through the details of this initiative? How can fintechs apply? What will the process look like?
Sure. So maybe you can scroll it down. The Razer Gold side, like I said, that's a closed loop virtual credit where people basically use that to interact and play games. This is interesting because in the past, why did this come about? You talk about monetization for a lot of these platforms. So we plug into guys like Bigo Live and all that. We plug into games, and obviously, with everyone staying at home, from adults to kids, this stay at home has actually seen the game side of the business do very, very well. And obviously, we have partners who want to access the users that we have kind of grown over the years. We have about 80 million registered users globally, and therefore, we're working with partners like Zook. I'll do a shout out to Zook. As you know, Zook is a club in Singapore. With the lockdown, they've shut down, but we've introduced cloud clubbing with them, where people who still want to listen to DJs partying, they can still come in and show support. So that's one of those things that we do at the Razer Gold side. And if you move on to Razer Fintech, this is the other arm, and this is the part that I actually lead. So our businesses span across online, offline merchants. We also have our own e-wallet. So from this perspective, clearly the online part of it, we do the gateway. We are probably one of the leading gateways out here in Southeast Asia. Many people are trying to digitize. People are trying to get onto e-commerce to keep their business going. We can come in very quickly to help them from whether it's rates, specialized rates, waivers of certain fees, and all that. Offline is interesting to a certain extent because it may not be in Singapore, but for example, Malaysia 7-Eleven is definitely still open. Some people who don't have credit cards still need to kind of get fiat into the system. We work with our partners there to get cash into the system. So again, anybody who wants to work around that to target even the kind of underserved or unbanked kind of target audience, we can unlock that network for them. And obviously supporting from a marketing perspective, I think helps. The tendency is when Razer does a marketing campaign, I think people do sit up and watch. From the wallet side, we are talking about, very, very quickly pushing the cashless side of things. We are also open to funding marketing campaigns. Some of these guys who are pivoted to basically come up, for example, in Singapore, there's a big talk about delivery platforms, trying to make sure that they can help hawker centers and all that. They may not have the brand or the reach at this point in time. We're happy to come up and help them amp that up. Separately, I guess, just in line with the last part, which is Z Ventures. Z Ventures is our corporate investment arm. That's led by my Chief Investment Officer, Edwin Chan. So we are literally using this corporate venture arm to basically identify companies in various segments. It also includes the fintech side, of course. It could be existing partners, it could be new partners, to really kind of help them along. It could be anything from bridge financing, venture debt, Series A, Series B. Happy to actually look at that. So I think this is kind of the three legs to our fund.
That's great, thanks, Meng. And just picking up on that investment piece, so for AMTD's fund, as Calvin described, the idea on the investment piece is to co-invest, matching basically with existing VCs in the market. Have you thought about, are you doing direct investments here, or is it a matching piece? What do you see as most effective at this time?
Well, I guess we could have gone down the matching because we obviously have also a lot of friends over the years that are at the VC fund. So some of those ideas do come across. But the reason why we put this again together, Becca, as we talked about, is back to the whole point, is if there are immediate opportunities that people don't have time for multiple parties to be, doing due diligence and all that, we want to be able to react fast, and that's why we kind of put this together. But again, the door is open. We are having chats with some of our VC funds. It's also from a perspective of deal sourcing. There is only that much we can do and sieve through. So obviously, anybody who has interesting deals, have done a certain level of due diligence that can help us get things going fast, I'm happy to collaborate as well. So Calvin, I'll reach out to you after this.
Yes, I was going to say that. Why not join forces?
Yeah.
Venture, well, this is like the Avengers, right? I think Razer and AMTD shall join force.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That could be the Avengers Solidarity Fund.
Absolutely. I think the most key about the overall is that we don't put the ceiling or put any cap or restrictive power surrounding what we can do. I think exactly like what Meng has mentioned, and I think about this joining course, I think we would want to call for more partners, investors or interested parties with the investment pocket or with the heart to contribute and to support the community. I think that we work together. That's why you check it out, our infographic, you also see that there is a link that, we call for accredited partners or investors to joining us so that we could make it ultimately, I think, available to everyone and make it, for those fintech players, of course, operating in Singapore or in the region and ultimately supporting the local ecosystem. I think the whole power of this is to connect the fintechs with more different parties or circles, but ultimately with also the financial institution, and to make it effectively supporting this fintech in a practical sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The need for people and businesses to come together is more important now. It's more than ever. And I just wanted to pick up, Meng, on what the feedback has been like over the last week, because clearly, Calvin, you've had 24 hours, and Meng, you've had just over a week now. And
Yes.
it'd be good to kind of get some insight on that, but also a little bit around your roadmap, because that would be interesting to hear more about.
Yeah, so I think the feedback or the kind of interest level has actually been quite overwhelming. Partly also because, as explained before, when we announce stuff, we don't really just get stuff from Singapore where we are headquartered. We get people pinging us, from various parts of the world, and we're trying to see what we can do to help across within, and obviously within the means that we can, and that's why partnerships work and help as well, because if there are things that we know we can't do alone and there are partners that we can pull together, that would help. And obviously different regions, different countries are going through various problems of themselves, so each of the things that there's no one solution that fits all, so we are literally kind of diving into each of them and seeing what we can do. In terms of roadmap, I think this is not something that is a one-off. I think this is something that we've always talked about doing. The Z Ventures have been set up, and it was talked about for quite a few years. We've made certain investments along the way. In the past, is really to add on to our initial kind of gaming ecosystem. We've invested into esports tournament platforms, a energy drink company, and all that. But I think with this part of the business really growing for us, when we're talking about the services side, is really a time for us to pivot as well and use the funds to actually push it, because this is, at the end of the day, drawing from our balance sheet. So it's not a fund per se standalone. It's drawing from the cash that we've kind of scrimped and saved and raised during our IPO a couple of years ago, and now I think it's time to really put the capital to work.
Thanks, Meng. I'll take a quick audience question. There's one from Smita from Flourish Ventures, asking about where Razer Fintech is operational. So which countries are you operational in? And I guess maybe an extension of that, which countries is this COVID-19 fund available for?
Yeah, so I'll split it in two parts. So because if you look at what I've said, number one, the existing business, we are across Southeast Asia, not in every single country, but pretty much Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, there's starting. So we're across Southeast Asia. So if it's an existing partner or new business partners per se, obviously the fit needs to be there where we actually operate in. But on the other side, for the direct investment side, we are actually open to various countries and regions, because the ultimate goal of the Razer Fintech business is not just, again, to be a Southeast Asia or particular country-focused business. It is really, again, as I've mentioned, leveraging on the reach, the brand, the users that we've already kind of cultivated over the last 15 years, and really taking the best-in-class kind of fintech services to our users globally, right? So we have 90 million registered users, 90 growing very, very fast. And to the extent we can then take some of the kind of partners along to new countries, and that's something that we are planning to do as well.
Anything in the UK marketplace?
It's interesting. About 2 years ago, I was actually invited. I met Natalie Black. I don't know whether you guys know her. She was working in number 10 Downing at that point in time. She brought me in, and I had to slip through the back door because the Prime Minister then was around. But we were talking about the UK. So UK, I think, clear interest. Lucy, I don't know whether you've been to our store. We opened our Razer store in the first week of December. Not great timing, but at the time when it was open, we literally had hours of people waiting for hours to get in. So the store was kind of our first thing there to kind of see the response and all that. And yes, I mean, I think UK's fintech environment has been very, very vibrant. We do have kind of intentions to explore there, but again, I think we probably can do that only after this travel restrictions and all that is lifted before we can make much progress.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And I suppose on the UK tip, Lucy, it would be good to understand a little bit more about some of the initiatives that you're involved in, and in particular touching upon the SOS, which is a really nice way to kind of frame it as a Save Our Startups initiative.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got a few initiatives that I'd highlight. The first is Standard Chartered. We've also announced new funding. So one is a $1 billion COVID fund to finance businesses that are really on the front line in tackling COVID, as well as a $50 million emergency relief fund to donate in support of our communities around the world. So that's not just the UK, that's all of our footprint markets. Of course, Singapore and Hong Kong are massive markets for us at Standard Chartered, as well as the wider Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. We have also been doing things like leveraging our existing portfolio ventures and SU ventures. So one of them is a B2B fintech platform in India called Solve. And what they've been doing is trying to address some of the new SME supply chain challenges arising out of COVID. And then we've got our work here in the UK, trying to support the government and the wider ecosystem in thinking about getting various forms of funding out to the community. And SOS is called Save Our Startups. It's a campaign that a few of the fintech leaders here and wider tech leaders here have launched to encourage government to establish some form of fund to support startups, but also other initiatives around accelerating various tax incentives to continue to encourage private early stage investors to back the sector. And just like in Singapore and Hong Kong, in the UK, the standout sector in the innovation economy is fintech. It's a clear area of strength and strategic advantage. So we think it's super important for the government to come together very quickly with all of us in the private sector to maintain that vibrant pipeline of innovation.
That's great, thanks Lucy. And now that you've heard a bit more about the initiatives from Calvin and from Meng, particularly for Southeast Asia, how do these compare to some of those initiatives you just mentioned that are either global in nature or more European focused? In your experience, in your conversations, what is the help that's really required? And if you're a founder in Southeast Asia, how should I be coming to Standard Chartered Bank? What should I be asking for, and how can I get it?
Yeah, I think both examples are fantastic initiatives where you're showing real and tangible leadership and support for the community, but doing so in a way which mobilizes other participants in the markets to come in around you, which is great. You know, I think that concept of match funding is a powerful one for all governments around the world to think about at this time, so that you can be there to encourage startups to continue to thrive or to survive during this period and thrive thereafter, where it's difficult to access third-party funding. And so we think that kind of match funding from governments will be sufficient to encourage existing investors in those startups to put in more capital to survive through this period. And it's not just because funding is contracting in public and private markets, it's also because, you know, startups, unlike other businesses, many of them are pre-profit, right? So, and they also have unique cost structures. They've got, you know, very, very high skilled technical employees that cost more than a lot of the, for instance, wage and furlough schemes that we've seen around the world. They have other pieces of their cost structure like cloud computing costs, co-working costs. For fintech, it's regulatory compliance costs as well. All of that needs to be taken into account when we're thinking about the extent and nature of support schemes from government and how you incentivize others to come around you. In Southeast Asia, I mean, obviously we're a bigger lender in Asia than in the UK. So we've been doing, where possible, things to support our community, not just with the funds that I've outlined and that we've announced in the market, but looking at how can we be more flexible in a prudent way around terms and principal repayment, deferment, that sort of thing for the SMEs that are in our client base, and extending that new funding in particular for SMEs who are really engaged in some of the health crises around COVID.
Yeah, that's fantastic work. And one of the things I wanted to touch upon is how can the public and private sector really work together, and how should that model develop going forward in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, and I'm sure we'll keep evolving. So match funding is sort of in recognition that the government not necessarily the best investment decision maker around venture investment, right? So you might think about delegating the investment decision making to established institutional investors, but also allow other angel investors to co-invest alongside, and that outsources some of the decision making. You might also think about, okay, is government trying to solve for the whole startup ecosystem, including, at seed stage, where there's certainly a capital need, or do you want to focus more around the medium stage, around Series A to C, and in that way perhaps de-risk some of the taxpayers' spending? Those are some of the considerations. But really, doubling down on this notion that fintech is a strategic sector for the public sector in the UK, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. So it will take a more will demand a more proactive approach from government to continue to promote investment from the wider ecosystem.
I think that's a really interesting point you just raised around the early stage versus sort of Series A, B, C+, and what you're trying to target here. Could you elaborate a bit more on that, on where you see maybe the most impact? What size of company should we be looking at supporting as a broader fintech ecosystem, and what impact that can have?
Yeah, I suppose there is an argument that if you focus on businesses that have already demonstrated business model viability and an ability to attract outside capital, you are not only de-risking a little bit the taxpayer spending, but also preserving more of a productive capacity that if it were to disappear, if these companies were to fail, starting again from scratch would be quite a wasteful endeavor versus earlier stage businesses. But there's doubtless pain across the capital spectrum. Obviously later stage, hopefully they'll survive better. Actually, a lot of the fintechs at late stage are thriving right now because they've recently raised mega rounds, earlier this year or last year. They've managed to pivot their business models to continue to grow during this period. So hopefully those guys will continue to thrive. They'll hopefully actually use the capital that they have perhaps to look at acquisition of smaller players in the ecosystem, and perhaps we'll see new super apps emerge from this period. Strategic players, I think, will also have new reason to look again at some of the fintech targets that they passed on previously, because for instance, valuations were too high, or the market was just moving too quickly. Now that valuations are tempering a little bit, I think we'll start to see more strategic investors and acquirers. But it's really the entire ecosystem. And I think for the earlier stage, perhaps instead of funding, you might think more carefully about other mechanisms. For instance, tax incentives around in the UK, it's EIS schemes, things like that. How do we accelerate those sorts of tax incentives for early stage investors from the private sector to play their part?
I think this comes into the broader point of there will be a sort of natural selection that occurs over this period, and those that are strong or able to pivot and adapt their business models will succeed. And the idea is to support those that are able to survive, I guess. Calvin, Li Meng, I want to bring you into this. Has this informed part of your decisions when you've been thinking about structuring these funds? Are you aiming more to target early stage, growth stage? Are you trying to, Calvin, you've got grants involved in your fund structure. Is the idea to give everybody a fighting chance, or to focus in on those that are strong? Calvin, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think the key, as I said, is not about being restrictive, right? I think we want to support anyone capable, or in a way that we see that, those will be the one that they are already the supporters by themselves, contributors or builders of the local fintech ecosystem or across Southeast Asia. So I think this definitely will be the eligible ones that we support the supporters, right? We enable the enablers. Then I think the overall empowering the overall community will be even multiplied effect up. So that's how we see it.
That's great. And the same question to you, Meng.
Yeah, so I think for us there is no real criteria, I would say, because if you look at us, I know some people say why is there no fixed criteria and all that. I think we are open to look at fundamentally, does the business have a strong value proposition? It's not whether the company has done well or not, as strong and big and all that, right? It goes back down to the fundamental value proposition. Is it something that is worth for us to maintain? If it's an early stage, happy to see how we can help. If it's a late stage, guys, then we have to have a little bit more, I guess, open discussion about if you were to come in, is it in the form of some form of, like we said, venture debt, bridge financing? Because if we have a conversation about valuation today on the basis of investment, you won't get past a conversation for the next couple of months or whatever, right? So it really depends on the situation and at the core, what kind of value proposition this business has for the future.
Just to pick up on an audience question, it's come in on, what's the length of time once someone has written in? Do you have a rough time frame, Meng?
Yeah, I was just about to reply to Sabah. So
great minds.
Yeah. So I think that the thing is, we do want and hope people bear with us. As I've said, ever since before we even launched the fund, there was already a bunch of partners that's come to us. We are trying to see through as fast as we can. Ever since the announcement, as I've said, is again not just Singapore, it's not just Southeast Asia. We've gotten a whole barrage of incoming from the rest of the world. So we're literally kind of making sure different pockets of the team try to see through as fast as we can.
I think similarly, I think for the AMTD side, I think I agree with what Meng has mentioned. I think it's not just about this particular point in time. It's about collecting or accumulating what we know about the local landscape. I think, for example, for AMTD side, we have been long-term involvement within the community, being the one of the founding partners, for example, for the Singapore Fintech Festival. We also have our portfolio companies locally in Singapore and also across Southeast Asia. I think ultimately it's also to finding the right mode of mechanism to have the right partner. I think Lucy mentioned quite a bit about the public sector and the private sector partnership. I think this is actually the core about our fund that we have, the honor to have AFIN to be our partner to jointly launch this fund. And ultimately, we have the breadth of experience from AFIN, from MAS, of course, from IFC, from the Southeast Asia Banking Association, MasterCard, and ourselves, so that they will be the formulating our strategic investment advisory board, providing the top-level governance. But then ultimately, I think it's through the Apex Exchange that we have the connectivity with each of these fintech players, that we're not just providing the fundings, but it's an ongoing, connectivity with them beyond the funding point in time.
That's great to hear. And there's another question from the audience, and clearly we're trying to get as many of the audience cues out and get you guys to respond to that. And Lucy, I'd like to ask this one of you, because thankfully you sent over a great report the other day around the fintech sector, and can you kind of just share a little bit more around which segments within fintech seem to be doing relatively well, or within reason?
Yeah, I think for the sector as a whole, all of us expect a stronger secular push towards digital payments and e-commerce. But on top of that, I'd expect more of a pivot towards fintech use cases that are geared towards health, online consumer staples, online learning, and digital content. So all areas that are faring relatively well during the crisis period, and I think will continue to be top of mind after this period of necessary consumer adoption continuing post-COVID. So I think what fintechs will now need to focus more on is not just cash preservation and survival during this period and thinking more about profitability, but also what's their core mission, their product roadmap, their customer service in that post-COVID world. Who do they want to be? What value do they want to create? How do they pivot their business model more in favor of those areas, those fintech use cases, to be relevant in that post-COVID world?
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and I was about to come on to that, the post-COVID-19 world, and you clearly had the same conversations around this as well. On what does the world look like? How do businesses start to think about that? What products and services do they want to be offering? And just to kind of move on to you, Meng, around what do you see once the vaccine's out there? I hate the phrase new normal, but things are back to kind of a normality, and what would have changed from the fintech perspective, but also what would have stayed the same?
Yeah, so I think interestingly enough, because of the space that we are in today from the fintech side, we do see obviously the whole I would say ignition of the kind of the people being lit under fire, SMEs and all that never thought about digital transformation, suddenly saying that I have to, and I have to do it very fast. I don't know how to do it. Can you help, right? So I think as you look at this coming out of hopefully the COVID-19 situation soon, is that a lot of people are now suddenly going to really look at themselves and say, did I do too little too late? How do I get there faster? So this I think, there are businesses that have been doing very, very well. We have business partners that literally show 20-30% year-on-year growth, but very, very manual kind of a basis, right? And literally, because of COVID-19, their numbers have completely collapsed and gone to zero. So I think these are the kind of conversations we've had with them. We've tried our best to convince them, but now I think they look at the situation and say, oh man, I better do something about it. So I think innovation and transformation, especially for traditional business, will accelerate. And then I think what will stay the same, well, I think stay the same as now. I think now that everyone's getting very used to this whole Zoom and all that, I bought a lot of equipment to do the streaming and microphones and all that. I hope I'll actually use that a little bit more. So I think the physical, as Calvin has said, you do have to have certain physical meetings, but I think now that everyone is getting used to this whole digital interaction, you don't actually have to wait for a physical meeting to make a decision one way or another. So speed will actually increase in deal making, and that's why I think that will go towards.
Well, hopefully in the post-COVID-19 world, I'll stay at home and game on more. That seems to be a big craze at the moment, certainly. Yeah, no worries. That certainly is a craze amongst my friends too. So, Calvin, I just want to pick up on a similar question to you around, what is it that you see the world will look like post COVID-19, and maybe focus on the changes. Clearly, everyone's talking about digital. The trend towards or accelerating the pace of digital, but can you kind of dissect that a little bit, and what does that mean to you?
The word that we use it for the fund solidarity, I think tells you everything about how I see it. I think that this whole global pandemic will actually get all of us even more united, more connected, I think digitally or in different forms in kind, but also ultimately become stronger. I think previously, I think just Meng has mentioned, I think if you have the choice of having physical meetings, you might want to delay until a physical meeting for the first meeting, become more formal, and do things, I think, step-by-step manner. Now that I think it cuts in, directly that you just, directly go online, without any boundary, that you connect real time, real situation. So that actually making everything even more efficient. And I see that, ultimately the world is going into more global citizenship. And I think, how we see that, we could together build an even better world. I think nowadays is really the time that we see more beyond yourself as a singular point or within a particular place. only, very restrictively. It's ultimately about more cross-dimensional, cross-sectors, cross-regional. So I think post this global crisis situation, I would think that there will be even more opportunity than I think, for especially for fintech companies or for technological companies or new economy players, that they will be able to transform more the traditional ones and embracing the new market, which will be far bigger and hopefully better.
Thanks, Calvin, and thanks to all the panelists on the call. I know we're almost out of time, but I can't not ask you this question. It is the Green Shoot series after all. So a quick fire round to finish. I'd love for each of you to share one good news story, one positive Green Shoots moment that's coming out of COVID-19, relevant to FinTech or your own personal lives. Lee Meng, I'm going to start with you. Quick fire round.
So I'll point back to something that I've talked about. So you can't go offline. You can't go for your favorite clubs and all that. So something that was interesting that we did very quickly was to team up with Zouk Club to do clubbing. If you are interested, it's going to happen again tomorrow night. We've run it for 3 or 4 times. Each time we see more than 2,000 people concurrently viewing and actually kind of doing gifts and all that to the DJs for support and all. So if you're interested, tomorrow 10 p.m. please download Bigo and use Razer Go to support your favorite DJ. So that's from me.
Thanks, Lee Meng. We'll all be there in that virtual club, that's for sure. Calvin, to you.
I think I want to share quickly 2 happy situations. I think one is of course about what I just mentioned about the IPO, Singapore IPO of our investment banking arm, now become the first world dual listed US and Singapore listed company or listed investment bank. But then I think we also become the first digitally conducted IPO in Singapore. I think that because of the COVID-19 that we have this first digital IPO that we very happily conducted. But I think also about connectivity. I think we now build that our overall businesses for our digital in Singapore, and we headquartered our overall digital businesses out of Singapore. And we will increasingly connect, and we want to connect more with more friends. I think for those of you online and not online today, but then we started to hopefully engage more with a hotel in Singapore, even an AMTD hotel. We roll out a digital finance leadership program with SMU and also NUS. But now that because of the COVID-19, then everything seems stopped, but not yet, right? So in fact, now that today with the Green Shoots, I got to connect with all of you. I understand over several hundred people online. So I think this presents more opportunities, close opportunities, and the power of connectivity. So very happy to be here today.
Connect with friends. So you're likely to see Calvin at the virtual club tomorrow of Lee Meng, so please do dial in. Lucy, to finish, your Green Shoot story.
Sure. I think there are so many great stories coming out of this difficult period. One which struck me recently in particular was Halodoc in Indonesia. Halodoc was founded by Jonathan, who I met 4 years ago when we were both on a sustainable leadership program here in the UK. We've stayed closely in touch, supporting each other over the years, but he's now built the leading health tech platform in Indonesia, and he's been very rapidly responding to COVID. And he's partnered up with the government in Indonesia as well as Gojek to provide telemedicine and free drive-through testing for COVID-19. And they've also been integrating with the hospitals on treatment. So I think particularly for a market like that, a tech solution, it can be really powerful, and Jonathan's proving that.
That's great to hear. So we should all check out Halodoc and also join the club night tomorrow. I think that's enough plugging for one day. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call. Thank you to our panelists, Calvin, Lee Meng, and Lucy. Stay safe, everybody, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thanks, guys.